how many copies of any given Pokemon card actually ever get graded and how many remain out there in the wild ungraded? Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Today, in this video, we'll try and answer that question as best as we can. I have a couple examples here of cards that I think all of us would love to know how many exist. How many Squirtle Master Balls were printed? How many Aerodactyl V Alt-Arts were printed? Unfortunately, when it comes to set cards, we will never know. Pokemon will never give us that information. It will always remain a mystery. The only numbers we have are the population reports by PSA, CGC, Beckett, etc. And we can look on eBay, etc. whatnot. But essentially, those are the best numbers we have. We will know how many Aerodactyl V Alt-Art in PSA 10 exist in the world. Now the question is, what percentage of all cards ever printed actually get graded? I recently remembered a comment I got on my Master Ball video that said something along the lines of, and I'll pop it up on the screen, Master Balls are way more limited than we think they are. We don't know, we'll never know for sure how many were printed, but we can look at the PSA population and maybe get an idea of how many were printed if we look at other cards in this hobby where we have all the information. We'll dig into the data, we will look at all the numbers, and we'll do the math to figure out how many cards actually get graded. Now, I have a couple examples today, and the first one is related to this card right here, the Pikachu VMAX from the CoroCoro comic. This was released in 2022. It came with the paper or the digital version of the comic. And what's important here, or how this is related, is the comic at the time came with an insert where people could apply to win this deck right here. The Start Deck 100 CoroCoro version that comes with the Pikachu and Eevee Vs with the nice little CoroCoro stamp. This one's still sealed. It's in my sealed collection. And people could enter a lottery after buying the comic. They could enter the lottery to try and win this deck. Now, the good thing for us is that CoroCoro told us how many they would release, how many winners there would be. That's perfect for what we're trying to figure out today. The comic came with an insert to apply for the lottery. And I believe on the insert, it said how many winners there would be. I'll try and insert a picture if I can find one, but also we have this right here. Winners received the deck, and with the deck came this tiny little paper insert right here. And at the top, what's relevant to us is that here, it says, Start Deck 100 CoroCoro version, and, the February CoroCoro comic release, which was this release right here. And then right here, it says, 10万人特別サービス. So 10万人, this is 10, the kanji is 10,000. So 10 times 10,000, 100,000 people. CoroCoro told us that they released 100,000 of these Start Deck 100s. So we know for a fact that there are 100,000 Pikachu V CoroCoro versions and 100,000 Eevees. And so if we look at the population reports by PSA, CGC, and Beckett, we will know what percentage of these cards released have actually been graded. Now, before we look at the numbers and the data, let me ask you a question, and I want you to put a comment down below. Take a guess. What do you think is the percentage that has been graded? 50? 70? 40? 20? Let me know in the comments down below. What's the percentage that has been graded of these two cards right here? Let's jump to the computer and find out. I went digging, and here are the results. This is February 26th, 2024. PSA has graded 1,962 of the Pikachus. CGC has graded 36. BGS, we don't know. More on that in just a second, but we can see the total is just under 2,000, which the math is very easy and nice right here because it's such a round number, 100,000. Around 2% of the Pikachus have been graded. Eevee, very similar, a few less, but just under 2%. So after about 1.5 years of these cards coming out, about 2% have been graded. The comic came out in February, but then the lottery winners received these decks in October, I believe. Now on the right here, I have the actual screenshots from the grading companies. At the top we have PSA, then in the middle here we have CGC, and at the bottom BGS, this is one cert I found, one card I found. Like I found a picture of a slab. I looked up the cert and we can see the Pikachu V, CoroCoro comic, 100. Here we see the subgrades. And then down here at Pop Report, it just doesn't show anything. It's just empty. And if you try to find the Pop Report on its own on the website, you can't actually find it. It's a hot mess. I don't know why BGS doesn't populate the Pop Report. These cards exist, they have been graded. Honestly, it's embarrassing for a company this known, this popular in 2024 to just have empty Pop Reports. Like, what the heck is going on, BGS? Like, get your act together. It's embarrassing. So we unfortunately don't know what these numbers are. I have found slabs, like I said, the cert I looked up. I've seen like 3 Pikachus and Eevees in Google Images. I couldn't find any for sale on eBay. These are out there in BGS Labs, but I don't think it's that many, and I don't think it would change your percentage that much. But from the information that we have, we know it is around 2%. That these aren't the most popular cards ever, but they're 2 very popular Pokemon, and they are CoroCoro promos. And CoroCoro promos have been around for decades, like forever, and have always been popular. So like, these aren't the worst cards to grade. These aren't just regular non-holo commons, and that's why this is low. I was surprised, 2%, kind of wild. Now look, I was thinking what you might be thinking. Well, these aren't that popular, so that's maybe why not as many have been graded. And for like a modern, ultra-modern chase card, like a Master Ball or a crazy SAR or something, the percentage is probably higher. All right, the more expensive, the more popular card, the percentage must be a lot higher, because who grades these CoroCoro, Pikachu and EVVs? They aren't that crazy. What I will say is that they came out during a time when grading was booming, like really booming, and so it's not like they came out at a time when no one was grading cards. And for a good chunk of time, there was like decent profit grading these. So a lot of flippers looked at these cards. But yes, for sure, like percentage wise, I'm sure that more expensive cards get graded more. I don't really doubt that. The question is how much more? And for that, I actually have another really good example. And it is related to this card right here. The Masaki Alakazam. Not just the Alakazam, but all Masaki promos. We know how many were released of each of the Masaki promos. Oh man, that's fantastic news. The reason why I say this is fantastic news is because Masaki promos have been around for a long time. You can see 1999, it says right there at the top on the slab. And they are very popular cards. Not all equally. Alakazam probably being number 2. Number 1, of course, being the Gengar, which I unfortunately do not own. But man, look at this Alakazam. Isn't that a cool card? Like the artwork? I don't know. Either way, I digress. Very popular cards. Highly sought after. I would still say probably still more niche than ultra-modern chase cards, for sure. But no one will say that Masakis aren't popular cards. And the Masaki Gengar is undoubtedly one of the top chase cards for any Gengar collector out there. Such a sick card. I went digging and I found an old post, I think it was like 10 years old, on E4, Elite Forum, with a picture of a magazine where all the numbers are listed for how many of these were sent to people back when they were released. Here's a picture. Right here, we can see Alakazam, 39,000. Gengar, 36,000, Machamp, 29,000, Golem, 22,000, and Omastar, 21,000. Quite interesting also that Alakazam is higher than the Gengar. Basically, if you didn't know how the Masaki promo worked, just real quick, you had to send in like a transfer card and a lower stage of the Pokemon to receive the evolution of the Pokemon in this promo form. And so people could send in whatever they wanted. They could send in a Kadabra to get an Alakazam, right? They could send in a Haunter to get the Gengar. And so more people sent in the Kadabra to get an Alakazam, which I guess at the time Alakazam was more popular than Gengar. Very interesting. But we have these numbers. When people talk about Masaki promos, they always say 30K, 30K, 30K is like the famous number for Masaki promos. But we have the detailed information. Now, I don't know which magazine this is from. I tried to find like another source or like the original magazine even to maybe show it in person. I couldn't find it. But we have this number, and this is pretty accepted in the hobby. And again, we can look at this number and we can look at the population reports to figure out what percentage of Masaki promos have been graded. Now, we just saw for these cards right here, it was just 2%, only 2%. 98% of these cards printed still are out there ungraded. What about the Masakis? Leave another comment or edit your comment or whatever you want to do. Take a guess down below in the comments. What's the percentage like for Masaki cards? They're definitely more popular. They've been around for a long time. Surely it's higher. Must be a lot higher, right? Well, let's find out. Back to the computer. Alrighty, let's switch over to the Masakis. And here are the results. Alakazam, 39,000 released, 3.64% graded. Gengar, the most popular one, 4.5% graded. Omastar, the least popular one with only 21,000 released, 3.79% graded. Machamp, 3.23%. And Golem, 3.65% graded. You can see all the numbers here. Feel free to pause the video. I also have them over here. We can see the PSA population report. It includes all the half grades, includes all the qualifiers. Down here we have the total for CGC, and down here we actually have information from PGS, and we can see the total on here on the very right side, all the ones that have been graded. Now there are a couple remarks or some caveats. When we look at the population reports, these almost certainly include some regrades. Like for example, people cracking PSA 9s to send them to CGC, or lower grades even. Or people cracking CGC ones to send to PSA. Or people cracking PSA 9s to try and get a PSA 10. I'm convinced that some of these are regrades. So these numbers are likely a little bit inflated, but I don't think it's that much. The other thing too that I want to point out is that these being this old, I'm sure a lot of these have been lost to time, have ended up in a landfill, in an incinerator, or have just been destroyed to a point where they are not worth grading anymore. At the same time, because they are this old and this popular, they're also worth grading in lower conditions. But look, I did the math. Even if you say 75% of Masaki Gengars have been lost or destroyed or whatever, we would still have 9,000 out there, and 1,622 graded would still only be 18% of 9,000. So even if you say that 75% have been lost or destroyed or whatever, the percentage still isn't that high. Like 18% isn't crazy. For the Alakazam, it would be like 15% or something. This surprised me a lot more than the Pikachu and Eevee we just saw. Like, I expected those to be somewhat low. But man, going into this, before looking at the numbers, I thought the Gengar, so popular, man, such a cool card. I'm sure like 20% have been graded, or maybe even 30%. 4.5%. That is incredibly low. It really surprised me. Now, it's important you take everything I say with a grain of salt because the information is never perfect. For example, right, there are different numbers for the Masakis. We don't know how many they printed. These are just the ones they sent to people. Were there extra copies that made their way onto the market? Maybe, but if that happened, then the percentage would just be lower. But we never have like perfect information, but it's about as good as we can do. The Masakis and the CoroCoro Start Deck 100. There are other cards in the hobby where we have information like Snap promos, for example, or like Pikachu illustrators, but those are so limited. They're an entirely different beast. But these are, mass-produced, mass-printed cards, Masakis and the CoroCoro 100 cards. And among the mass-produced cards, these are the best I could find to get this information. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's so interesting. And what's the implication here for these modern cards? Well, Now with the grading mania, everyone grading like seemingly all cards all the time, I'm sure the percentage for Squirtle Master Balls is pretty high, relatively speaking. But if a Masaki Gengar only has 4.5% ever graded across PSA, CGC, BGS after 25 years in the hobby, there is no shot we are anywhere close to even 50% of like Master Ball cards graded. It's just, it would be wild. Like, even if you say percentage-wise, right? Percentage-wise, 10 times as many Pikachu Master Balls get graded nowadays, we would still be below 50% of all cards ever printed. Again, this isn't definitive. This is me interpreting the information I have from these other releases. But I think it's important to see these numbers and realize that, hey, actually, percentage-wise, not that many cards ever get graded. And more cards stay in binder collections, stay on the market, going around from person to person, wherever, right? Or remain in packs with these modern cards. And these as well, back here, right? I mean, this is also modern, but you know what I mean. And my main message here is that with all these cards that I've shown today, the population can and will increase into the future. For some cards, faster than for other cards. Masaki's, the population will continue to grow, but probably not very fast. Whereas with these, the population of these Master Balls and these CoroCoro promos could easily double within a relatively short period of time. That's my kind of interpretation from what I've seen in the numbers. But yeah, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Were you as surprised as I was to see these really low numbers? I know people were flipping these cards right here. I know people were grading them to collect them. They were very popular and decently expensive for a good amount of time, considering what this cost at release, the kind of the MSRP of this product. 2%, that's so low. There are, of course, other grading companies that I didn't include, so, but the big three matter the most in my opinion: PSA, CGC, BGS. There you have it. Leave a comment down below if you have anything else to add. I would love to hear your opinions. Do you like this kind of video? I love diving into the data, doing some very low-level analytics and that kind of stuff, and a little bit of interpreting. But I thought it was very interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, please. I really appreciate that so much for everyone. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Click that button, subscribe. Thanks so much for that too. And by the way, I started a Discord. Should probably have announced that in the beginning, but I recently started a Discord. It's still empty. And if you want to join the Discord, feel free to do so. Let's chat, Pokemon collecting, investing, whatever you want to talk about in there. We can talk about this kind of stuff too in the Discord. Link down below in the description. Anyways, have a good day. Thank you, and bye-bye.